Hi there, and welcome to Backstage with Speaking Your Brand. I'm your host, Carol Cox. Today, we have two of our current Thought Leader Academy clients who are actually graduating next week. They will have been with us for 8 weeks working on their signature talks, their thought leadership messages, and their pitching and speaking proposals. I'm excited to bring Erin Mark and Dr. Deborah Stine to you today. And next week, we're going to hear from the three other women who have been in our Thought Leader Academy as they deliver the 10-minute version of the signature talks that they have worked on with us. And what I love about doing these live shows is that not only do I get to share with all of you how amazing these women are, but to also showcase the different industries, the different topics that they represent, and how much variety it is, and how important it is for you to have that thought leadership message for the change that you want to see in the world and the change that you want your audience to be able to do for themselves. So we're going to have a roundtable discussion after Erin delivers her 10-minute version, and then Debbie presents her 10-minute version of her talk. So hang tight, listen to them. Please let us know in the comments what you're liking, questions you have, cheer them on, and then we'll have that roundtable discussion afterwards to talk about what it was like to put their talk together and what is next for them as speakers and thought leaders. All right, Erin, you are first up, so I'm going to bring your slides up on the stage and go ahead and away.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much, Carol. Hi, everybody. All right, let's get started. So, obviously, as you know, my name is Erin Mark, and this is the beginning of my talk. So, I want to think about something. Don't you just love that feeling when you first wake up in the morning and you kind of look around and think, wow, everything in my entire life has worked out exactly the way I wanted it to? No. Thank God. Me neither. I was going to say, if you said yes, please message me afterwards. I have so many questions. That space between expectation and reality, that's where uncertainty lives. Uncertainty is one of the biggest stressors we are all living with. It is causing us so much burnout. And that's what I talk about. And here's the good news. These aren't going to be some big dramatic changes that I'm going to suggest. They're small. And it's based on my lived experiences with research to back it up. Because for me, uncertainty hasn't been just an occasional visitor, it's been a constant companion. I have spent my entire life training to die. And we're going to talk about that a little more in a second. But first, I want to start with a little confession. About maybe 10 years ago, before one of my very first big keynote talks, I was so nervous. I had this pounding headache. So, a few seconds before I went on stage, I reached into my bag, grabbed some Tylenol, took it. And when I went to put it back, that's when I noticed the label. I didn't take just regular Tylenol. I had accidentally taken a Tylenol PM. Instant panic. I started sweating. My heart was racing. By the way, that headache, the least of my worries. My brain went into overdrive. Am I going to start slurring my words on stage? Am I going to fall asleep in the middle of this 45-minute keynote? Is everybody going to think I'm drunk? Of course, none of that was actually happening yet. But my brain was fully reacting to what might happen. Because that's what our brains do. They don't wait for danger to show up, they respond to the possibility of it. And research shows our brains find uncertainty more stressful than receiving bad news. When you don't know what's coming next, your nervous system is on constant alert. So if you are feeling more stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, you are not alone. It is a human response to the world we are all living in. At work, that can look like showing up when you're already exhausted, understaffed, and still expected to hold it all together. You're probably being asked to do more with less. And on top of that, navigating your own uncertainty in your personal lives, maybe with families, relationships, finances, your own health. It's a lot of pressure. And listen, while I may not know every unique challenge that you have, I do know what it's like to live with uncertainty that doesn't let up. Which is why, right when the MC was announcing my name after I took that Tylenol PM, I had to pause and ask myself one question: what can I control right now? Because for me, that question has always been my North Star. I was born with a fatal illness called cystic fibrosis, and my life came with an expiration date. Doctors told my parents I wouldn't live past 18. And I found that out early on because I overheard my dad on the phone one night quietly saying my life expectancy out loud. I was 5 years old. While most kids were dreaming about their future, I was trying to grasp that I wouldn't get one. And the night after I heard my dad on that phone call, Make a Wish came to our house. I didn't fully understand what that meant at the time, but I was putting two and two together, and I knew I was sick enough to get a wish. And most kids back then wished for Disney World. That was sort of the default and had already been prearranged. But no one told me that. So when one of the men from Make a Wish leaned down to ask, Erin, if you could have one wish to go anywhere in the world, where would it be? Well, without hesitation, I shouted, Tahiti! Yes, you heard that right, and you see that picture. Tahiti in French Polynesia. I was a very exotic 5-year-old. As you can imagine, the room went silent. After a couple seconds, that same man cleared his throat and said, How about Disney World? I had a follow up question. Are there palm trees there? The entire room shouted, and you're probably thinking it too. Yes! So I grudgingly accepted the palm trees and a chance to meet Mickey and Cinderella, even though I don't look pleased in this picture. I remember thinking, Tahiti will have to wait, but not too long, because even at 5, I knew I was on limited time. And limited time changes how you see the world. Birthdays feel different. I made it to 18, then 20, then 30. Each one a bonus I wasn't supposed to get. I was so grateful and I wanted more. But at 35, that road ran out. I entered end stage disease and I was dying. And I remember holding, excuse me, grief in one hand and gratitude in the other. Grief because I didn't want to go, and gratitude because it was a miracle I got to live those extra years. But at the last minute, as time was running out, a breakthrough drug was approved and it saved my life. I didn't die. I was going to get to live. But I did not expect how I would feel next. It was both relief and confusion. I was preparing to wrap things up. And suddenly I needed a 401k, a LinkedIn strategy, SPF in my moisturizer. I have to pause and ask, you people been living like this your whole lives? This is very stressful. The future I never thought I have was in front of me. This identity shift that happened overnight almost. And you don't have to have gone through what I have to know that feeling of an identity shift. For you, it could be a role, a goal, a season of life that has suddenly disappeared. In psychology, it's called identity foreclosure. And it's when we cling so tightly to who we are, we can't imagine who we could be. This future that I had wide open came with almost a lot of pressure, positive pressure, but new expectations, new options, new decisions. Even good change can knock us off balance, right? We buy a new house, have a baby, get that job we always wanted, or get that role we worked really hard to get. Nothing bad happened, but suddenly there's more at stake. And what I learned was everything that I needed to live, to train to live, to really live for this next phase of my life. I had already learned while dying. Because struggle has a way of teaching us things that comfort never does. What I learned through all of that massive uncertainty, that burnout I went through, it wasn't about pushing harder. It was about staying calm, and not just as an emotion, but as four key pieces that anybody can use to help survive uncertain moments. Whether you're a company, corporation, or individual, it relates to all of it. Controlling what you can, adapting, leaning on others, and moving forward. I would be honored to share my framework with you. And thanks so much for listening to a little bit of my story. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you so much, Erin. That was fantastic. As you know, we've been working closely over the past few months, so I'm always inspired when I hear your story and your message and the message that you have to share with your audiences. Before we bring Debbie on for her 10 minutes, let me just ask you one quick question. So,
Yeah.
how did that feel? Did it feel as
Oh, it
good
felt
as
great.
going to Disney World or Tahiti?
I mean, maybe not Tahiti, but it felt just as good as Disney World, I guess.
Okay.
You're
I'll take
better than
it.
Disney World, Carol. Speaking your brand is better than going to. It's almost like at the Super Bowl. Like, what will you do next? I'm going to
Yes.
see Carol Cox and speaking your brand.
Which you did last week, and we'll talk about that during the roundtable too.
Yeah,
All right, that was amazing.
yeah.
Fantastic delivery as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that too during the roundtable. All right, so Debbie, you're next. I'm going to load your slides up here on the stage. Let me bring you up, and so Debbie, go ahead, take it away.
Guys, I'm Dr. Deborah Stine. I'm founder of the Science and Technology Policy Academy. And I want you to first think about what societal problems that you care about. It could be health policy, just like Erin was talking about. It could be environment or energy, national security, homelessness, whatever it is. Just think about those societal problems and what you might be able to do to impact policy that will help resolve those challenges. So the first societal challenge I addressed was when I was a high school student. I was in Texas on the Gulf Coast, and just like the little girl in this picture, I was really concerned about oil pollution in the Gulf of Mexico. I could see it on the beach. When I went in the water, I would get in my swimsuit. And as a high school student, I conducted research on the use of microbial elements to clean up that oil. And that was like really exciting for me. I produced a paper. But what I found out shortly afterwards was that if you want to have impact on society, it's not enough to produce a paper. So just like the at the Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones went to all that effort to find the Ark of the Covenant, and then it ended up in this big warehouse. The same thing can happen with scientific technical research unless we take actions to get it out there into the world. So this came up again when I was at the White House, and you can see me there in the back, and I'm sort of in the red suit, and President Obama's on the right. And this is during the BP oil spill. And I sat there in my office listening to the folks in the office next door, trying to figure out ways to respond to this challenge. And I thought back, that goes back to my paper. Just, again, we have an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. What can we do about it? What actions can we take to have an impact on society? And luckily, through the years I was in DC, including at the White House, I was able to have an impact. And I can say, all these things change because of my contribution and that of many other scientists, engineers, and health professionals to society. But what I learned is that it doesn't happen just with scientific and technical evidence. It also means storytelling. So the person on the left who is shaking hands with President Clinton is a guy named Norm Augustine, who's a former CEO of Lockheed Martin. I worked with him on this report called Rising Above the Gathering Storm. And this was a bipartisan, bicameral effort to try to think about how the U.S. could be more innovative with scientific and technical information. And it was something where we could really see that the parties could work together. They passed the American Competes Act. When President Obama came in office, he signed legislation to actually fund all the different activities in the American Competes Act. But unfortunately, those days are behind us. So although it used to be that Republicans had a great deal of confidence in scientists, that's not the case. Overall, in the United States, we've seen a 10% decrease in confidence in scientists, and in Republicans, it's been 20%. So we really need to take actions to figure out how to get back that confidence that we lost. It began during the pandemic, but what's of greater concern is that we're not really getting it back. And one way to do that is to make sure that we answer the questions that policymakers and the public have. And too often, as scientists and engineers, we focus on the effectiveness, the degree to which a societal goal is met. We also have to think about efficiency. What will get the best bang for the societal buck? We have to think about equity, the fairness of the policy. Who are the winners? Who are the losers? And we have to think about ease of political acceptability, the degree to which people will oppose or support a particular policy. Another lesson that I learned, and this goes back to when I was working on the Rising Above the Gathering Storm report, is that we need to learn that people prefer stories. You'll see here on this chart on the right that yes, facts and evidence do play a role, but stories also play a very important role. And so for those of you who are not scientists, engineers, but you still think that public policy should be evidence-based, your stories, your lived experiences are just as important as that scientific evidence in trying to bridge these moral and political divides that we're facing today. So what we need is a combination of skills and stories and spaces. We need skills. So this is an example of an analysis I just recently did for an organization called Reimagine Appalachia about using waste heat from data centers to provide some sort of community good, like perhaps a greenhouse that could help grow food for people who lack food or those who are for food deserts. When I was teaching a workshop in Virginia, a student told me about her grandmother who was forced to leave her home because of PFAS in her well. And we need spaces. We need to make sure that the stories and the analysis that we do are focused on where people live, on their communities. And this is analysis done by one of my former students when she was at the University of Minnesota, and she was concerned about tear gas that came into where she was living, attending the University of Minnesota during the George Floyd protest. And we've seen this even again today, recently with the ICE protest. So we need those skills and stories and those spaces where people live to really have an impact on policy. So to do this, I came up with this ACE framework. It includes 3 elements. The first is analysis, the key thing that I've been doing for decades, getting those facts and figures. And then we want to communicate. We need to sort of tell a story. But just like this, we also have to do engagement, because just like this scene, which is from Hamilton, where Aaron Burr is telling Alexander Hammer to talk less, and that he needs to smile more, listen more. That's something else that we also need to do. And we need to do this in partnership with those who have those lived experiences, so that together we can have an impact on society and make the world a better place. So if you'd like to know more about my ACE framework and how you can get involved in all the work that I'm doing to try to bring scientific and technical information to bear on societal outcomes, please connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to tell you more.
Fantastic, Debbie. All right, I'll leave that. All right, we got that slide. Wonderful. So it's been so fun to work with you as well, Debbie, because you and Erin are so different in your approaches, your speaker archetypes, I would say. But I love that you bring what is authentic to you, to your speaking, to your messaging, and to your talk. So Debbie, I'll start with you. Tell me a little bit about the speaking that you traditionally do. And I know we call you a presentation machine because you do, I don't know how many virtual presentations and workshops plus in-person conferences that you do. So tell me a little bit about how you approach putting your presentations together, and then why you decided to come work with us here at Speaking Your Brand.
Well, I actually did a catalog last summer, and I do about 40 different workshops and different workshop topics. So I really cover all sorts of different things: analysis, community engagement, AI, the application of AI, things about AI data centers. So I really cover a vast array of topics. Most of the time, my audience is scientists, engineers. It can be anything, from high school students up to very senior professionals. But it's still sort of the same people who already believe that scientific and technical evidence should have an impact on public policy. And this year, I really felt that I would kind of try to make for 2026, I tried to go from that workshop stage, which I've been on for quite a while, to try to do more at a keynote level. But I also realized that the same presentation that I give for all these workshops is not going to be the same as that I would give on a stage. Where like sometimes, as I find out, I can't even have slides with me that I can point to and talk about my 4 E's and all these different things that I do, which for me is a real challenge in terms of doing these things. But if you look at like TEDx talks and South by Southwest, I mean, it's true that, it's not rarely do you see sort of slides. Yes. So I sort of knew I needed help. And then I came across Carol actually for totally other reasons, for AI related reasons. And then I found out that she did this work, and I thought, I think Carol can maybe help me. And that's how I started.
Okay, great. All right, we'll come back to you, Debbie, in just a moment. Erin, let me come to you. So we also connected last fall, and tell us a little bit about, where did this, desire to become a speaker come from, in sharing your message of having cystic fibrosis and this idea of training to die and then now training to live. Where did that impetus come from that you wanted to share your message with more audiences?
Yeah. So I've been speaking for over a decade, but my message was completely different. I guess there's some similar themes in that, but it was how to leave a legacy while you're still here and the impacts that you can have on others. I think a part of me, as I was speaking while I was dying, it was, I just wanted to make a mark, no pun intended, on this world. And I didn't want anybody to forget about me. If I only had limited time here, I was going to make it count and be able to meet and hopefully impact as many people as possible. And I wanted to leave people better than when I found them. And then once my life was saved, I found myself thinking, well, why should I stop speaking? And I wanted to not waste all these bonus years that I was going to get to have and to live. And I thought, well, my message doesn't need to be just personal, because the stories and the lessons from me dying, as I mentioned, taught me how to live, but they're also a way to teach others how to live but be successful in their own lives. And I could also move into a
Mm.
corporate atmosphere as well, associations, conferences, to share that as well. And that was really important to me because perhaps I could reach so many others that I thought I would never be able to reach otherwise.
Yes, and yes, like you said, broadening your message out, say not just to even people who have an illness like cystic fibrosis or some other type of illness, or even like, caregivers or people in the healthcare
Mhm.
industry, which I know
Yeah.
one of the different types of audiences you can speak to are people in healthcare, but then
Yes.
broadening that out. And so I remember as we've been working together on your talk, Erin, obviously you have the personal stories, and that really is the core of your talk and your message, because it is incredibly inspiring to people. But even if they've never been in your situation, they can still think about this idea of uncertainty and where it
Yeah.
shows up for them. But then taking the storytelling, but then wrapping it into a framework, your calm framework, and into that third party credibility, the research studies, and kind of blending all of that together. So what was the process like for you working on your talk? I know you like to write, which is great. I'm a speaker, clearly. I'm not a
Yes.
writer. You like
Yeah.
to write. So tell me a little bit about the,
Yeah.
the process and what worked well for you.
Yeah, what was really interesting and what I loved about working with you, Carol, is being able to get everything that I wanted to get out and for you to digest that and then you to organize that for me. Because I had a lot of stories, a lot of content I was not lacking in. But I needed somebody to rein me in to say, okay, these are really important and what you should go with first. And as you know, I like to write out everything. I write out any talk I've ever given, whether it was any of my previous talks, my TEDx talk, this talk that I do now. I write everything out word for word as I'm starting to create it. It's just how I learn. And it's not so much the memorization part, it's almost giving me a framework to go through and how I learn. And then I at least get used to the flow of it. But sometimes, as you know, and anybody listening, that I talk fast. I didn't have a lot of time to live. So I think Diane Diaz said I had to get everything out really quick. So I also needed a coach to be like, okay, let's also hone how I talk and try to slow everything down a little bit. Because even though I have been speaking for so long and doing keynotes and workshops, there's never not room to grow and to get better and how we serve our audiences. So I really appreciated working with you, Carol, to get me to that next level and get
Mhm.
that expert feedback that you're so good at.
Well, and I was going to tell you on your delivery today, you
Yeah.
did an incredible job at the pacing. So for those of you who are watching and listening, we talk about with your content, the content should have contrast, right? Like you're kind of bringing the audience up, energetically, and kind of like them bringing them down and bringing them up through your stories and your content and so on. The same thing applies for delivery. Even if you're super energetic and upbeat, if you keep that same energetic upbeat level the entire time, the audience doesn't really have a chance to just like take a breath. Neither do you, right? And so that's right. One of the things we've been encouraging all of you is to do that vocal contrast, find those key moments to slow down, right? Bring the energy
Yeah.
down a beat, have those intentional pauses, and you did it.
Yay! Okay, all right, great. I mean, I don't have much breath left, so I mean that's really good advice for me. I got 45% lung function, so I gotta harvest everything I got. I'm so happy you said that. Thank you so much. I've been working really hard at taking that feedback from you guys.
I can tell, and you did. And because you have such great energy naturally, and I saw this when you were at our 1 day workshop here in Orlando last week, you have incredible energy. But then just doing that contrast, then when your energy comes back up, the audience tunes in even more. And then same thing when and this is for any speaker, you slow down and you pause, and then the audience also leans back in.
Yeah,
So
I
love
love
that.
it. Oh,
All right, Debbie, let's come back to you. So, you and Erin and the other three women who will be on the LinkedIn Live with Diane next week have been with us in our Thought Leader Academy for it will be 8 weeks as of next week, your graduation. So, tell me a little bit about what that experience has been like for you, because we do the one-on-one VIP day where we map out your talk, but then we have these small group weekly calls to dive into other topics. What has been the value for you there?
Yeah, I think for me,
yeah.
the hardest part, sort of like Erin, is trying to get down to like my core message. Like this was 10 minutes, but I have to do this again in a week in 5 minutes, right? And that's really tough, for somebody like, particularly for someone like me who, was a former academic and in policy where you're used to having like an hour to talk. It's really, really tough to get your core message down. So I think that what was useful for me was, the session where we went with your big board, with, kind of like the kind of introduction or like act 1, act 2, act 3, all that other aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then that was still kind of like the first time I did that, not long after that, it was still pretty long. And then it's ever since then, I've been just trying to winnow it down further and further and further. This is the closest I've gotten. I don't know what it was, just now, but when I was, doing my practice runs and timing myself, I got myself down to 8 minutes, which for me is amazing to get down to 8 minutes, because just a couple of days ago I was like at, like much longer than that. So, so I think that is really helpful. And then the other aspect that I think that you added, and I guess this is maybe even the day after we did it, is you added those 3 S's, the spaces and things like that, which I thought was helpful in bringing together some of the aspects that I was interested in. Like I was focused much more, because I'm an analyst, on my ACE framework, which is analysis. And I thought that would be the focus of what I was doing. But you basically said, okay, no, that's more the end point as opposed to the beginning point. And that was a change for me, because again, I have been for decades teaching workshops, classes, everything on how to do policy analysis and how to communicate those analyses. But I really wanted to get to that engagement point. And I think you can just see, and this is why I think Erin and I pair so well together, is yes, you need an analyst like me. You need those researchers who do the research, but you also need people like Erin to tell the story, because believe me, they're going to remember Erin a heck of a lot more than they're going to remember me.
No.
I mean, even people on this podcast, they're going to remember Erin's story.
No.
But
that's
we get together
okay.
because opposites attract. We need you.
Yes, we need both of us. We need a partnership to kind of have an impact on society, and we're just having our impacts in different ways.
Yes.
So
yeah,
I think that to me was something that really helped, because I'm used to doing stories, right? I'm used to writing reports with beginning and middles and ends, but I've always done it for my workshop presentations. It's more of steps, like steps 1 through 10 versus more of a story.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up the 3 S's. Now I'm a sucker for alliterations. I will, if, whether it's an acronym like Erin has with CALM, if that, if I can't think of an acronym, and you already had an acronym, Debbie, with ACE, which I figured was good for Act 3 for the call to action for your audience. But I really wanted in that Act 2 to think about you sharing with an audience on a keynote stage, right? Not a workshop training, not your traditional presentations that you are already excellent at, but how can we broaden out your message? And that's where I thought of the skills, the stories, and the spaces. And again, I like alliteration because then I remember it, which I just did. Otherwise, I probably would not have remembered it. Yeah. So, because I really imagine you, Debbie, because of the background you have, the Obama White House, National Science Foundation, all of these incredible positions you've had and the impact that you have, I think a lot of people can learn from you, not only the scientists and the researchers and the people who are already in those fields, but I think a lot of other people, whether it's healthcare or nurses or just, people who do have some type of expertise, but don't think of themselves as connected to having an impact on policy. But I know your messages, but we need them, right? To whether it's writing op-eds, engaging with their local community, state legislatures, et cetera, so that these positive changes are more likely to happen.
Yeah, I think that's really the case. It's one thing for me as an analyst to present their story, but I will never be as strong a voice as, I'm based in Pittsburgh, and for those of you who watch Pitt, the Pitt, which is with Noah Wiley. They definitely have doctors and nurses, from Pittsburgh who said, hey, this is real life. Like what's on that show is really what we experience. Well, that obviously means a lot more to people than anything I would say, any data I would give about all the challenges that are faced by emergency departments in Pittsburgh public hospitals, right? So, I really think it's important to kind of broaden that message. And like I said, that's the reason I wanted to do this, is to try to go beyond, my core audience who already know me, and, I know maybe they're tired of me at this point, but to reach others, because ultimately, my life goal is to have an impact on society with evidence-based knowledge, whatever that knowledge, might be, and to realize that though we as scientists and engineers, we have to be humble enough to recognize that what we say is not enough to really impact society. And that's, I think, a very important message for us to understand. And then for also those who have stories to know that we need them, because oftentimes people will say, oh, but I don't know science, or I don't know. It doesn't really make any difference. What's important is that you tell your story so that you can show that, yes, this is an important issue to address. Or like in Erin's case, like there's been a lot of cuts to research funding, for example, to show that, yes, just because, we had federal research funding, it created this drug, which ended up saving her life, right? And we've really had, for the past year or so, really had to get across that message. And before, I think, as a community, we took that for granted. And we can no longer take for granted that people understand the power that science and technology can bring to people's lives.
Yes, very well said. All right, Erin, what is next?
Are we collaborating I think what's next is Debbie and I are going on tour for
Science
Tips and Stories.
Yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry. I'm like, Debbie, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Let's get together.
Yes,
Bring Carol with us. Diane, hop on. All right, go
right.
ahead. Sorry, Carol. I got so excited.
We're going to Tahiti. We got to find a speaking engagement.
Yes.
Watching.
I kept wondering, Erin, actually, did you ever make it to Tahiti? I've actually been to Tahiti, and it's very lovely. Did you ever go?
I have never made it to Tahiti yet.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, we got to solve this problem. We need to book a speaking gig in Tahiti, right?
If anybody is listening, hire me for your offsite in Tahiti for corporate. Debbie and I will come. Yes. Carol's going to come. We're in.
Yes. Make Erin's wish come true.
Right.
The adult Make-A-Wish, right?
Yeah.
I survived. Right? I remember, by the way, Cinderella, this beautiful blonde, would save me a seat every day at breakfast because I was obsessed with her. I was not obsessed with Mickey, but the Cinderella I warmed up to. She was near a palm tree. And I thought to myself, if she only knew that I made it, right? That I survived, because at the time, right? She probably didn't think. Yes. So I got to find her. So Cinderella, if you're watching, I made it. I made it, Cindy. And I'm going to Tahiti eventually.
Oh, we're going to get you there soon. All right, Erin. So that was my next question, is what's next for you?
Yeah. Besides Tahiti, what's next for me is keynotes and being able to impact as many people as possible, and really firing up this business of mine and really just taking it to the next level. I'm looking to really expand into just healthcare, more conferences, associations, but corporates, really any industries going through change, which is very broad, right? But partnering, right, with HR teams to come in and to help also motivate their employees, talking about realistic resilience, not this forced optimism, right? Because I think we have so much going on in both our professional lives and our work lives. In our personal lives. So we need a way to stay calm as much as possible, to keep moving forward and to make a better life for all of us. You don't need a crisis to change everything in your life. You don't have to have a terminal illness like I did, right? It's just these small changes that can really set you up for success professionally and personally.
Erin, I was just last week, because I know your framework and I know your talk since we've been working together. And there was something, I was like sitting on the sofa and getting ready to watch something on TV for the night to relax. And your calm framework popped into my head for some reason. Maybe I had been watching the news. I don't know. That probably was it. And then I actually went through it. I'm like, okay, what can I control, adapt, lean on others, move forward. And I remembered it. And so I think that is the power of combining a framework with a story for a talk for an audience, because I think they will walk away remembering it. And then they'll start putting it into practice, because as speakers, sure, we want to, entertain the audience while we're on stage, inspire them, make them feel good, have them think differently for that 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour that we're with them. But we want them to be able to take what they heard from us and carry it forward and remember it. And so I think, Erin, they'll remember your story, and you'll remember your framework. And Debbie, same with you. So what's next for you? I know you also have some speaking engagements coming up.
Yeah, so I'm sort of like building up again for my goal of 2026, which is to move to more of a keynote stage. Where I'll be next week is actually with Dora Clark, who you've had, I know, on your podcast, Carol, and her interview was really very useful. And so my challenge, I think, that I have next is to figure out the kind of how to market this enough to get to the right audience, because in my world, a lot of people speak for free, and I would certainly love to speak for free, but the reality is I cannot afford to speak for free. And so I need to figure out some way to still get across my message and find audiences who are interested in inspiring their audiences, with what it is that my message is, in terms of what it is that I have to say. So that, I think, is my big next step. So I'm doing that next week, and then 2 weeks after that, here in Pittsburgh, I'm doing a speakers with the National Speakers Association. I'm doing another event, also again where I have to do this in like 5 minutes to get a recording to be able to use that for marketing. So I still have a lot of like workshops and things booked. I haven't really tried yet to book to find the right thing for the keynote, because I think it's going to take some thought. I'm hoping after this strategy section I have next week, plus all the stuff I've learned from you, Carol, that I can figure out, who might be interested in the message that I have, that I can maybe make the pitch to. And I mean, I feel that it's definitely possible, because I've done this in the past. Like at NIH, they didn't, at one point, they didn't have any classes that were on policy or things like that. And I pitched it to them, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago now. And, then I started out with one class, and then I went to like 5, right? So I found that if I could just find one like niche, that I can, it will make sense to me, but I'm just not quite sure what that is yet. So I'm going to rely on you and others to try to help me figure out it from a marketing perspective, what that is. I don't feel very comfortable yet, again, with that keynote style of marketing.
Okay, well, we are here for you, Debbie. And like I told you, I think because of your background, your credibility, your message, your storytelling ability, you are right for the keynote stage. A lot of it is relationship building, and even going back to the conferences you've spoken at in the past, even if even if you weren't paid at the time, or you were a breakout session, and pitching them as the keynote speaker for the next event, whatever it could be next year, because they book far in advance. A lot of the times you would be surprised that we have to let them know that, hey, like I could be this, like I could be your keynote speaker, because they don't necessarily put 2 and 2 together. And it can feel very intimidating to do it, because and I'm speaking for me and probably for a lot of listeners, fear of rejection, like maybe they just don't reply. What are they going to think about me? But I would just say, like, Debbie, you are so qualified to be on those keynote stages. Audiences need to hear your message. So as a public service to your audiences, you should start pitching yourself.
Yes, and I will. And I just need to figure out how best to do it. But yeah, I mean, and again, I'm passionate about my message. My entire career has been focused, that was to not, because originally I could have just been a researcher, but to try to have an impact on society. And I've been able to have that, working for all the different places that I've worked. And so I really feel I can still carry that message. I just need to figure out how best to do it.
All right. Well, you're in the right place. All right. So everyone who was watching and listening, make sure to connect with Debbie and Erin on LinkedIn. Obviously, if you're watching on LinkedIn, you can see them as the speakers and you can connect with them there. If you're listening to this on the podcast, check the show notes for the links to their LinkedIn profiles. Also for their website, you can find Erin at erinmark.com. That's ERINMARK.com. And you can find Debbie's website at scitechpolicyacademy.com. Again, links will be in the show notes. And if you would like to join us in the Thought Leader Academy to develop your thought leadership message, your signature talk, learn the business of speaking, and be around an amazing group of other women speakers and women leaders, you can get all the details and apply at speakingyourbrand.com/academy. Again, that's speakingyourbrand.com/academy. And until next time, thanks for listening.
Thank